From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision Bill Fisher. There's soon to be Wonder Woman, Vicky Fisher, our Captain Marvel, head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuck, and our Batman, master of tools, gadgets, and all things mechanical, our mild-mannered soon-to-be billionaire, Alan Danvers. Their mission? To fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them, and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes and Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes and Training Podcast. I'm going to be the host for this episode. My name is Bill. Who else is hosting?
I'm Vicky, and we are Sans Jennifer.
No, we're not. She's Sam. She's right here.
Hi.
She's
Hi,
Sandy.
Jen. There
Sorry.
she is.
You can tell that Vicky doesn't look at the screen while she's talking.
Oh no,
That's okay.
it was blocked. It was blocked at the moment. I put this. Yeah. Hey, Jen.
How are you? Sorry,
she-
I'm late.
It's okay.
Oh.
Jen just ran into the house and came on.
I did.
Right
Like,
at the last
literally
one.
just ran into the house.
No worries. All right, we have a guest for our podcast this evening. We actually have two guests from the same team. They are from Team PGR. They are Chad Martin and Andrew DeKoning. Welcome to the podcast, gentlemen.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Anytime. So we first heard about you as a result of the One Lap of America. You were one of the electric cars that were there. So we thought we'd go over how things went and how things are racing an electric car. We haven't done that yet. We usually consistently mess up things with the old internal combustion engines. So we haven't messed up an electric car yet. So we're undefeated and untied with our electric cars. But could you guys give a little background on yourselves and your team?
Sure.
Yeah. Go ahead, Andy.
Sure. Yeah. So Chad and I, we've been doing sort of the amateur motorsports thing for a little while, 10, 15 years. I don't know, maybe even more for you, Chad, if you consider the rock crawling and stuff. But just in the last couple years, we have been watching what's been going on with all the electric cars and thought it would be fun to see if we could run one of those and what sort of problems we'd run into, and just the challenge of it. We've always been a little bit weird. When we were doing all the amateur racing stuff, we've done RX-7s. So yes, they're ICE, but they're rotaries. And so electric cars being a little weird is par for the course for us.
Chad, how about you?
Yeah, I think the same. That's how I met Andy. Was we were into RX-7s and making our ears bleed with those, and then started kind of
a louder car to a quieter car, I guess.
Well, yeah, you got to make up for it and save the hearing you have, I guess, after you do rotaries. But we loved them. I mean, I think one of the things that attracted us specifically to the Tesla Model 3 was, and I don't want to get too much into it yet, but it was how similar it was in driving dynamics and how well it drove, and good suspension geometry and all that, to Mazdas and Miatas and RX-7s. So that was part of the reason. But yeah, I think it was an intrigue over electric cars and seeing what where they could take you in motorsports at this point. So
Are there many electric cars in motorsports? I haven't seen that many. Have you seen that? Others or?
Yeah, I think that it depends on the arena you're talking about. They still have their limitations, which we can get into in agonizing detail. but they seem to really do well in autocross. They seem to really do well in time trials. Kind of the lay down that one quick lap. I don't think that they can really play in the arena of sprint races yet, and they certainly have no place in enduros. But they are quite quick for that one lap, and they have a lot of plus sides in those arenas, those kind of time trials arenas. So
That's awesome.
So how is it to race it personally? So I
Well,
mean,
it's quieter than the RX-7.
yeah.
For sure, which isn't
I
saying
mean,
much.
so what are the pluses? Would you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah, the pluses, so the loud thing is sort of a funny thing, but actually it's a huge plus to be able to hear what the tires are doing the entire time until you drive around a car that doesn't have like a loud motor all the time. You don't realize what you're missing, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And you can definitely tell what the tires are doing. The Tesla that we run has quite advanced traction and stability control, and when you get a little bit used to it, you can actually tell what those are doing too, to play with the car, either while you're going through a corner or braking or whatever. I would say though that driving it, I've driven a number of different cars on the track. Actually, for a little while, we ran our own sort of HPE kind of events and did a little driver coaching, driver training kind of thing too. So I got to drive a whole bunch of different cars. The car that felt the most like the Tesla to me is actually an Evo 10. That has a lot of electronic control too. All-wheel drive, tons of electronic control. You can tell that the computer's doing all sorts of stuff while you point the wheel. And so the Tesla is kind of like that. Now the Tesla has a lot more power. It's instant power. I would say you don't drive it the same as any of those other cars, because it will try and figure out all kinds of stuff for you. So generally, a lot of fun to drive, but yeah, it doesn't feel the same.
Tell me
yeah,
Oh, go ahead, Chad. You go ahead, Chad.
No, I was just going to say it takes a little getting used to, and Andy adapts quicker than I do to cars and tracks. And one of the interesting points of the Tesla specifically is it has that regenerative braking. So you can actually use that as a tool. You can actually trail brake the car with the regenerative braking. And it's weird to get used to, rather than peeling off of the brake pedal, which you can still do. That's the other thing, is you can shut off the regenerative braking if you don't like it. And some people do that. You can actually use the regenerative braking. And so you're actually going back to the throttle before you're even at the point you would normally go back to the throttle, because you're modulating the regenerative braking with the throttle. So it is different.
That term regenerative braking is not one I'm familiar with. What is, I mean, I do trail braking, threshold braking.
Yep.
What is regenerative braking?
Yep. So the Teslas and other electric vehicles, to a certain extent, when you come off the throttle and you have it set up to regenerative brake, and basically you're dead pedal, so no brake, you're coasting into a corner, it is actually slowing down quite dramatically. I forget, Andy, what is it gets something in G's.
It's like 0.4 G's of decel just from the regenerative braking. So you're not touching the brake pedal at all. The friction brakes aren't working at all. 0.4 G's, which is something like 80 kilowatts or 100 horsepower.
And what it's doing is it's putting energy back into the battery using the motors. So, and that's a drag, right? It's just like any kind of generator. It's a drag on the powertrain, and so it's slowing the car down, and it's a dramatic slowdown. And as you tip the throttle back in, it does less of that until you get to a point where it's actually applying power again. So it goes from decelerating to accelerating through a gradual actuation of the throttle.
It feels really funky the first time.
Oh, does it?
Yes. Yeah. And what we figured out, after playing with it quite a bit is, you threshold brake with the brake pedal, just like you always would. And then you come off that fairly quickly because the car is still braking using the regenerative. You use the accelerator pedal to modulate that as you're going into the corner. And then you go back to pushing it straight down to then come out of the corner. And since it's all-wheel drive and it plays with the motors front and rear and everything else to try and get you to turn. You can actually go back to the throttle 100% pretty quickly in the turn. So you're full brake, off the brake quickly, feather the accelerator, and then go back to full throttle. That's kind of what you do through a standard corner, which, yeah, that does not feel like anything you do in any other car for sure.
So what are some of the minuses and limitations that you find driving an electric car?
Well,
Or, I mean, we can go into your particular event later.
yeah,
but-
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the obvious one is charging the car, right? The battery itself at 75 kilowatt hours or whatever is something like 3 gallons of gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine, like, how far would you go in an ICE car, our RX-7s, for example? I mean, that would get us like 6 laps or something, before
Mhm.
we'd be done. So it is a real problem, which is why, Chad was suggesting a minute ago, like, what is it good at? Well, it's good at stuff where the track is short because you just don't use up all the energy. The other negative right now is those batteries, even though they're not huge capacity relatively to gasoline, they're also really heavy. We've actually taken apart a Model 3 to parts and weighed, a number of the different parts, whatever. The battery itself is 1,300 pounds with all of the penthouse, all the electronics that go with it.
1,300 pounds?
1,300 pounds.
Wow.
Which is like shockingly large when you think of like an RX-7 that we drove. I don't know, Chad, what was it, like 2,300 pounds or something for the whole car?
Yeah, totally dry. Yeah, so it's over half of an RX-7.
Yeah,
Most
just
of
in
them,
the
yeah.
battery.
Oh.
Yeah, just in the battery. So now the good part of it, of course, is it's 4 inches tall. It's all flat on the bottom of the car. They try and centralize it as much as they can. It's all between the wheelbase. So actually in terms of dynamics, it's not that bad, but yeah, just in terms of weight, it's really heavy. And right now there's no way to get away from that. You're going to say something, Chad?
Yeah, well, I think the other big drawback is just the other big drawback is it clearly you can't race a sprint race with it, right? So we're limited to the arenas we can play in right now, and which is okay. I think we've kind of moved into a different phase in our own careers where we're more interested in, experiences like the one lap where it's this big epic thing and it's time trials and we want to see, how fast we can go over a lap, or, a little more laid back than the wheel to wheel stuff, at least recently. So it can't play in those arenas that are kind of fun. I mean, we did endurance racing as well, and sprint racing, and but it can't play in those arenas yet. But it's really good at the time trials, really good at autocross, really good at drag racing because it's super consistent. So I think the limitations are the arenas and the weight, and as everybody knows in motorsports, it's been doing it for 5 minutes. Weight is the biggest enemy because it makes everything more expensive and slower and difficult. So, but yeah.
At least the weight's in the right spot, though.
I don't remember if you said, but what model Tesla did you use in one lap?
We used Model 3 Performance.
Okay.
There's actually 3 Teslas this year. 2 of them were Model 3 Performance, and 1 of them was a Model 3 dual motor.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 years ago when we did it, we were the only Model 3 Performance. And then another team that we've gotten to know, of course, had a car that broke down on them, and then they had a backup car that broke down on them, and then they ended up in a Model S P100D.
Okay.
And they completed it then. Now, a Model S is not a good track car at all. And in fact, most of the electric cars right now are not good track cars. So they were able to finish the event, which was kind of their goal, and really everybody's goal in one lap. But they weren't able to go, like full power on any of the tracks, just because it's not designed for that. But they still completed it.
So can you turn the traction control off on those cars?
Yeah, with the Model 3 Performance, it comes with something called track mode, and I think they're actually on track mode V2 now. And so you can play a little bit with some of the things that they give you access to. So they have a stability control bar that you can go like +10, -10 on, turn it up or down. You can change the car to be rear wheel drive if you wanted to, or front wheel drive if you wanted to, or you leave it in the middle. Trying to remember what else is in there, Chad. It does timing as well, track timing. What else is in there?
It's got a camera replay feature, although those cameras are not particularly high quality, but it's got a G meter, the lap timer. I'm trying to think of some of you can overclock the AC compressor to help cool the battery and powertrain a little bit, which is kind of a nifty feature. Although I will say that the car that we competed with, actually about halfway through the week, the bearings started going on the AC compressor. So it uses that quite hard for a track car, but it's literally using the AC compressor to not just cool you, but to cool the car.
Right.
Because it's all part of the cooling loop. It has a pretty complex cooling loop in it. So
Now, do they tend to understeer or oversteer?
Yeah, if it's stock, that's another interesting limitation of the car. There's not that much that you can do with the setup. It's kind of set up to be a street car, and you leave it, and it's fast in a straight line, of course. But we didn't leave it stock. We ran it stock 2 years ago. This year we did not leave it stock. We have a full suite of performance parts on there that we got from one of our partners, Mountain Pass Performance, up in Canada. And so we have full adjustability. And I would say in the stock format, it did kind of tend to understeer, and it's big and heavy. So if you go into the corner and you lose it, you just gotta wait, right, for it to come back. Car rolls over a little bit onto that outside edge, and you just get to wait. However, with all the performance parts on it now, and us being able to put a setup on it, 1 lap setup, so not too crazy because you got to do all that transit driving too. But even so, yeah, it drives really well. We put some aero parts on it this year for the first time, prototype aero parts even, and got to play with that a little bit on the 1 lap, driving day after day. It's good testing. And we got it to do a little bit of like a high speed understeer, but then a low speed, fairly neutral, or maybe even a little oversteer.
Okay.
Which to drive feels really good. A lot of fun to drive now.
What driving style changes did you need to best use the instantaneous torque from the engine?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're used to sort of the like RX-7 where it's low torque, high horsepower, rubber bandy effect. And the Model 3 is basically the polar opposite of that, all right up front. And then when you get to high speed, when the car hits about 120 maybe, it feels like it has no power left at all. So yeah, you do whatever you can to get out of the corner, get it straight and get out of the corner as fast as possible. Interestingly, in the 1 lap, we had a little issue where we were losing power at the end, down to like half even. And so then I had to change the driving style again. It's like, well, how do I drive this thing like a Miata and not lose any speed at all in any corner, right? And just go back right to the accelerator all the time. So it kind of changes all the time while you're driving it, but there's certainly changes. I don't know what you think, Chad, about driving style.
Well, the biggest difference obviously is the all-wheel drive, and it's a dual motor all-wheel drive, so it's gobs of torque, just like you were saying. So it, you can pick up the throttle and just mash it in the middle of the corner, and you point the wheel and it sort of figures it out, to the point where we were having to turn the traction control almost off, or the stability control almost off, because with the aggressive brake pads, the racing brake pads, and they were hot, and the tires are sticky and they're hot, like when it goes to grab and pulse the brake to try to correct your attitude in the corner, it's like jarring pulsing of the brakes in the middle of the corner. So, you know, we got to turn that stuff down. Whereas the RX-7, it was all, you know, it's completely, you know, the kind of the old school, what's the word I'm looking for? The RX-7 is very analog. So, and you can pick up the throttle early because it doesn't have a ton of torque, but you're also chasing the rear end just like you would in any rear wheel drive car. So, so it was different there. And I think for me personally, this car is so much faster than anything else I've driven that I'm still adjusting to that. It is, when it has full power and it's, you know, all nearly 500 horses and whatever torque it is, it's a different animal from a Mazda. So
Yeah.
So what are
That
some
is-
of the other changes that you made for the one lap to the car for the event?
Yeah, so like I said, we modified just about every suspension part that it has in order to get us all that adjustability. And that gave us the ability to adjust camber front and rear, which you really need to do. That helped a ton. Some of those parts are also made stronger by swapping them out. We changed sway bars. We lowered the car significantly from where it was stock. Obviously, it's already relatively low stock, but we lowered it even more to the point where we're scraping in a number of places. And then we did the aero bits. So there's like a chin spoiler kind of thing on the front. We had that on first, did some testing, and that actually kind of pulled the aero bands of the car forward. So it got a little oversteery, and especially at high speed, it didn't feel very good. So talking with the guys that we work with, we were able to get a prototype wing, put that on the back, and that really helped balance that aero out. Where you're able to change rotors and brakes and all that stuff, of course, in one lap too. So we did that. 2 years ago, we had significant problem finding parts. That's another interesting thing about driving an EV on track. There's not that many people doing it. There's some, but there's not that many. So parts are less available. 2 years ago, we just couldn't get any rear brake pads for the thing. So we ended up going out to like Road America on stock brakes, which is not a very good idea.
summarily lit them on fire.
Yeah, so one lap is, you know, start from standing start. I did that. You go down into 3, you go down into 5 at Road America, which is down the hill through the trees. Love Road America, awesome track, down the hill into trees. By that point, so the third time I hit the brakes, I could tell that they already were starting to get hot. By the time I went to 8, I could tell they were on fire. And so from then on, having regen, I was able to drive the whole track, you know, mostly using regen and not using the brakes. But for this year's run, we were able to get replacement rotors, pads, to get a true, you know, race pad in there, and it worked really well. There was I think we had basically 0 issues with the brakes this time, which was awesome. Confidence inspiring, right? Which helps your driving. What else did we change, Chad? Was there anything else?
Oh, I think the other thing is we put a 4-point harness in it, and keeping yourself stable obviously helps with confidence too. So other little things like that. We actually put a Motec. There's a Motec dash that taps into the CAN bus. hope I'm using the right term. Taps into the computer and monitors something like 140 different channels of data off of the battery and the motors and the cooling loops and all that. And we can kind of customize that display to tell us what we need it to tell us. So we can see the battery temp, we can see each motor temp, we can see how much power the car's making at all times, basically in kilowatts. So that's why Andy was very quickly able to notice, even on small power reductions, you know, when we were losing power. And so that, I think that's probably the extent of it. Other than that, you know, we have not modified the motors, electric motors. We've not modified the battery. Those things would be very hard to do, and I don't think anybody else that's running these cars is doing that right now. Some people are messing with cooling to try to alleviate cooling issues, but that is all still very much in development.
Did you do any of the track events using the autopilot?
I
Come
think we should try
on.
it sometime.
I could just
I had-
imagine autocrossing with an autopilot. I'd lose my mind.
So the car that we ran one lap in, which is Chad's car, does not have FSD on it, the full self-driving thing, but mine actually does. And so when they get this next FSD beta out, it'll follow the cones. I think we should try it.
See how
I think we
terrible
should
it is.
try it.
Are you going to be in the front seat or the back seat?
I think I'm gonna stay in the front seat for that one.
I think that's a great plan. I like that plan a lot. So, have you guys raced the one lap in an internal combustion engine, or has it always been the electric?
Yeah, I did it in 2006 in another friend's RX-7.
Oh, okay.
Two rotor, probably something like 350, 400 horsepower, but highly modified RX-7. And we did that run. It was his idea. I came along for the ride, loved it. It was awesome. That particular year happened to be a loop that took the one lap through a number of tracks in the Midwest that we knew well. So, at those tracks, we were able to do fairly well. Eventually, we ended up at Roebling Road, no problem, down in Louisiana, VIR, to tracks that we hadn't gone to. And so the way we split up the driving, which is always an interesting thing in that one lap, was he drove the tracks that he knew and I drove the tracks that neither of us knew. And that kind of worked out fairly well.
Sounds like you get the better end of that deal, I'm just saying.
Well, I like doing the new stuff. So that did not bother me at all. Plus I get to drive that car. That car is awesome. Love that car. Super, super fun to drive. Quick, all the good things that you like.
Cool.
And then I think, so that was the only time we've done it in an ICE car. 2 years ago, we did it in the Tesla, and then this year as well. So I've done it 3 times, and Chad has done it twice.
Nice. Vicky doesn't know she's muted.
No, I do.
Okay.
So, how about telling me about your team? Tell me what your initials stand for.
So the PGR is Panel Gap Racing.
I wouldn't have got that.
No, I wouldn't have got that at all.
Right.
No. And where does that come from?
I think well-storied exterior fit and finish issues that Tesla has had in their extreme ramp up of production design of vehicles. So it was a little tongue-in-cheek nod to, hey, we're running a Tesla.
Okay, yeah.
That works.
And I don't know, we just liked it, so we shortened it up to see if anybody would ask the question, and indeed you did. So
see, what we found is the key to a good theme or the key to a good name is for a couple people to get it, because it's no fun if nobody gets it, and it's no fun if everybody gets it. But if you can get that right balance.
So how did your team start? Are you guys regular drivers together, or did you just kind of pair up for a couple events?
Yeah, like I said, I think we did a lot of racing in RX-7s. I have a second gen RX-7 FC non-turbo that's all caged out, and we raced that in NASA quite a bit. Andy and I ran enduros together. I'm generally the car mechanic guy more than I am the driver. So there was another friend of ours that raced this same car in NASA and performance touring, which doesn't exist anymore. I think it's super touring now. But performance touring, he won 2 national level championships in the car, one in 2014 at Road Atlanta and one in 2015 at Laguna Seca. So we've, and then like Andy said, we've hosted with some other friends HPD events, all typically at what used to be called Mid-America Motorplex. Now it's Raceway Park of the Midlands.
Yeah, that's it.
Mhm.
And that's I would say more our home track than maybe Brainerd, which is much nearer to us. But so we did a little bit of that, a little bit of instructing, kind of just done all the grassroots or amateur different things you can do at a road course. So
Oh. So, why did you guys decide to choose a Tesla Model 3 versus the other cars that are available?
It's sort of because the Model 3 was the first one that came out that could really withstand track use. There's not, and I'm not 100% versed on like the Taycan. Maybe a Taycan can do it, and then there's the new Mach-E. And maybe a Mach-E could go on the track as well. I haven't seen any out there yet. But the Model 3 was definitely the first that could.
What about the Roadster? Would that have worked or not enough?
The old Roadster,
Yeah.
the Tesla Roadster, probably not. The cooling systems on that are not anything like what are on the modern ones. Specifically, the 3, and of course now the Y, have cooling channels that literally weave right through every single battery. And then like Chad was talking about, they have multiple cooling loops, and they can use the air conditioning to cool whatever, the motors, the battery, whatever needs it. And that's really the critical thing. If you take, like we were talking about the P100D out that the other team did 2 years ago, in about half a lap, the motors will start to overheat. And at that point, you're down to like half power or even less, and you're just like coasting. And the Model 3 they designed, you know, I think they had essentially a BMW model or a BMW M3 in mind when they designed it, and trying to beat that. And so it's a pretty good rabbit, pretty good car, driver's car to try and pursue with this. And they did hire people to test it and develop it. They hired Randy Popst to be able to develop it. They hired some staff that they have now on staff at the factory in Fremont, and it's really good. They did a good job. Anything else? No one's targeting like this sort of track use.
Okay.
So, let me see. You know, I'm really kind of blown away for the fact that electric car was a choice. It sounds odd and adventurous. How much work did you guys have to do to the car? And I know you guys did a lot, but when you're making those changes to the car for the track, did you have to use parts or something from another type of car, or does the electric cars have race setups?
Yeah,
like a package or something.
There's definitely a couple aftermarket companies now that develop parts specifically for Teslas. And I'm trying to think, Chad.
Specifically for track use. And
yeah, for track use. Yeah.
You know, what they'll call racing. I don't know if we call this a race car yet, because if you can't do a 45-minute sprint race, I don't think you're a race car. But
yeah.
But it's definitely a track car and a beast at the track. But yeah, I think that they don't, you know, Tesla clearly had in mind, hey, people, we want to build a track car, or we want to build a car that can at least go on the track.
Because somebody was going to try it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, everybody tracks everything. And I think that our progression personally with the car, and I think this is probably true of some of the other teams or people we know, is it's just like any other car. You start out, you figure out the Achilles heels, you address those, the car goes faster, a couple more pop up. You address those and a couple more pop up, and then you kind of, it just, you know, it never ends, right? It's just how fast do you want to go, or how much cash do you want to throw in a barrel and light on fire. So, you know, just, but
ain't that just
right? So at some point you're either stopping yourself or the car stops you, I guess. But
I think,
yeah,
Chad, 2 years ago when we put it together, we didn't really change that much. we kind of ran it stock on purpose to see what it would do. And I mean, the answer was it was pretty good. It wasn't bad. One of the interesting comments from when Ross was talking on the podcast was he said that he wouldn't want to be in the Tesla on the transits. And actually the car, especially when it was stock on the transits, is really comfortable. The seats are nice. It's got like built-in, you can listen to podcasts on the radio. It's got autopilot. It'll drive itself for a while. Yes, you have to charge a little bit more often, but it's really nice. It's a nice car. And so when we went to modify it this time and make it faster, we definitely made it faster, but we really didn't make it any less comfortable to transit with. So, I mean, I think it would be a lot nicer than, we had a lot nicer experience than Ross did in his Porsche.
In spite of listening to our podcast? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So compared to the RX-7, how is this event different when in electric car?
Oh, it's so much more comfortable. It's not even close. The RX-7 that I went in 2006, you know, highly modified, just insanely loud. I know the guys were doing the S2000. They didn't even have windows this year. At least we had windows, so there wasn't, you know, stuff flying into the car. But other than that, it was so incredibly uncomfortable to do in the RX-7 until you get to the track. Right, once you're on the track, you get going fast. The car feels great. A lot of fun. The event is really marathon, not sprint. So if you can get to the track feeling rested, not having eaten junk food, and be ready to drive, then you're like 50% of the way there. And when the car is so loud that nobody can sleep and all these other bad things, it actually makes it much more difficult. I think we both slept significant amount this time in the car while we were driving.
Yeah, it's
It
so
makes a big
quiet.
difference.
You can doze right off. All you hear is tire noise, right? And that's perfect for sleeping. So.
Yeah. With effort, we're not all the way there, but with effort, I think the Tesla could be a top 10 car potentially. The RX-7 that we were driving back then, the competition was lower. Ross talked about the competition this year being super high, and it was very high. The attrition was low. Back then in the RX-7, it might have been a top 10 car too. But I think actually they're both potential. They both have potential there.
So what about the tire choice or selection, since you're only allowed to use the one set and the car weighs so much?
That was our big drama this year. When we did it in 2019, we picked the sort of standard safe, I don't know if maybe it's safe, but the choice that I think more than half of the teams picked, the Michelin Pilot Sport PS4S. And that tire is great. I mean, that tire is, you know, Andy could talk about, you know, doing the one lap, but I mean, we can talk about doing racing from, you know, mid 2000s up till now. And the tire technology advancement is just bonkers, right? I mean, it just gets better and better to the point that, you know, a PS4 feels like race rubber from 10 years ago. So so that was a really safe choice. That worked really well. It worked really well in the wet. It worked really well in the dry. It wore really well. I mean, even with a 4,000 pound car, and that's basically what the Tesla is, 4,000 pounds. It did not wear appreciably. I still have them in my garage. I could throw them on the car and probably get 3-4 more years out of them if I wanted to. So, so that was 2019. This year we wanted to go faster. So we thought, we kind of had the bright idea about 2 months before, Andy, I think it was, to try something a little faster. So we were going to run the Yokohama AO52s. And so we ordered a set and they showed up, threw them on the car, went to a test day, did only 2 20-minute sessions with them.
Yeah, not even.
Yeah, on a smaller track, basically a law enforcement training center right near my house. And the pavement was a little rough, but but a smaller track and everything. We took 2 30-seconds out of a 7 30-seconds tire in 2 sessions. So we sort of, well, maybe I sort of panicked and thought there's no way we're going to finish on these. So the tire we ended up running, we ordered, and this was like a total rookie mistake looking back on it, but we ordered the tires, had them at Tire Rack basically ready for us, and then they don't do installs there as part of the rules, so we had to get them kind of shipped to with one of the superchargers and they put the tires on when we were at the local supercharger in South Bend, Indiana. And so the tires were, and the tire we picked was the Pilot Sport Cup 2, the 240 treadwear rating one. So it's actually a BMW OEM tire from the rear of a M2 competition, and we just ran it on all 4 corners. So we picked that one, and that proved to be kind of a mistake. Because we didn't scrub it in right. So Andy went out in the first event, which is the wet skid pad, and he said it was like driving on ice. I mean, it still had mold release on it.
We're from Minnesota. We know what driving on ice feels like. My
Yes.
minivan has more grip than that car did on the skid pad.
Wow.
It was terrible.
That means you didn't have a tremendous starting position for the rest
Yeah,
of it.
it's sort of disappointing because we know, having done it a couple times, the first events are actually really important. That's something you don't necessarily know the first time you do the one lap. They are really important. Those points that disappear, you can't get back, and the field starts to separate, fairly early. So that was not a good.
We
not a good
basically
choice.
gave the field 300 points in the first event.
Wow, that's a lot of points.
So what about charging, the time required and availability on the 1 lap trip?
Yeah, there's the charging, especially in 2019, before we said, all right, let's do this. We did a lot of work to try and figure out where we're going to charge, how much we're going to charge when we get to the track, how do we make sure that we have enough charge to complete the events, all that stuff. And kind of what we figured out through the course of that event was the transits are not that bad. The Tesla network is really good. And the car, you type in where you want to go and it figures out how far to go, how long, where to stop, how long to stop at each charger. It kind of does all that for you. So really what you have to focus on is the track charging. How much, where are you going to get it? How long do you need? We sort of thought that you should start at like a 90% charge level to get the best regen. Through the course of this year, we figured out now just charge the thing as high as you possibly can because you end up faster that way. So I think we charged something like 30 or 35 times in transit, somewhere between 2 and 5 times each transit, and for about 20 to 25 minutes. We figured out another interesting thing. It's much better to go a low in the range and charge from like 5% to 70% than it is to go from like 30 to 90. Charges faster, and you don't have to sit at the charger as long. And so that's more or less what we did. The charging at the tracks was a little more interesting. We did a little pre-running. That's another of those 1 lap secrets. If you want to go really fast, there's basically no warm up to any of it. You have to know what you're doing when you arrive to the track without any warm up at all. You get sort of like 3/4 of a lap to warm your car up, but you're not going to get any warm up in the track. So you pre-run, the fast people pre-run a lot of the tracks. And so we did that for a couple of the tracks, and we were able to figure out charging situations at those tracks. And so we either charged from one of the outlets there that you would normally charge like a camper on, or they had a Tesla specific charger that we were able to use. Or if we used a lot of battery and they didn't have something there, we would leave the track, go to a supercharger at lunchtime in between the 2 events, charge the car up, drive back to the track, and then drive it again. So it's kind of a lot of work, but actually the work is in figuring out how to optimize the charge level for the events, not getting between the tracks.
And how many laps did you get on a full charge?
So the 1 lap deal is like 3/4 of a lap of warm up, stop at the start finish, 4 or 5 cars in a run group, standing start, do 3 laps, all timed, and then you're done for that event. So depending on which track you're at, you know, like we did ECR, it's like 2.5 miles. Our event length is only like 7.5, 8 miles. If you wanted to do just like a HPE session at a track, you could probably get, you know, 20 minutes out of it, as long as you don't care that the power goes down a little bit near the end. And then after that, you'd need to charge back up for the next session. So for us, we were using somewhere between, well, the drag race, you use almost nothing. The autocross run, you use like 2 or 3% of the battery. And then in the big track events like ECR or Summit Point, we use like 30 or 35% of the battery in those 3-4 laps.
Did you experience any mechanical issues?
Well, I think the answer is in 2 years, no, not really. Knock on wood a lot. Not even my car, I'm gonna knock on the wood. Yeah, the electric cars just have a lot less parts. There's the mechanical part of the car, suspension, brakes, that's similar in an ICE car, right? Same thing. You have to prepare that, take care of it the same way you would. And then there's the electric part of the car, which is the battery, the motors, the electronics. The battery, the motor, electronics, you really don't have to do much in order to run. So very different than our RX-7s. We're taking care of the motor all the time, you know, changing fluids, paying attention to what's going on, fixing turbos, fixing intakes, like all that kind of goes away.
I think all I did this year to prep the car was I took it to Tesla and had them change. Each of the motors has a gearbox associated with it. And I had them, there's oil. Don't ever let anybody tell you you don't have to, or you can't change oil in a Tesla, because there is oil in the gearboxes. And so I had them change that, just because, you know, we use it pretty hard, and I think it's a lifetime thing normally, but when you're tracking a car, nothing stays a lifetime. So but,
right.
So
Cool.
any stage racing highlights for your team or lowlights?
in this event specifically,
Yeah. What are your highlights and lowlights so far with the 1 lap?
I think oh geez, it's always such a blur. I think the whole thing is a highlight. The lowlights and the highlights and the tiredness and the kind of just always, you know, one thing to the next is kind of the highlight. The whole scope of it is a highlight. That's what's intriguing about that event. I particularly fell behind on sleep this time. I think the transits this time for us were a little bit tougher, because it seemed like we kind of broke a threshold where in 2019, for the most part, we were giving up maybe 45 minutes or an hour to the other teams. You know, they would get there an hour, 45 minutes earlier than us. This time, the transit lengths were such that we had to charge an additional time.
Mm-hmm.
And that, for some reason, made it more like 2 hours. So we were getting to the hotels like between 1 and 2 a.m. In fact, when we got to Atlanta Motorsports Park, we basically just drove straight to the track and got there at about 5 and just slept outside the gate. So the other teams aren't doing that. So, you know, I think I wouldn't call that a low light, but we fell behind on sleep a little bit this time, and it drug us a little bit. But
we were the first ones to Atlanta Motorsports Park, though.
That's not the usual case either. But I think I don't know. Overall, just, you know, there was no big issues. In 2019, we almost hit a ladder on the road that would have ended things. That was kind of low light, but
Okay.
we missed it. So
I would say this year, because we went and we pre-ran 3 of the tracks, I was hoping to do well at those 3 tracks. Ross talked a little bit about it as well. He said, you know, if you can get to some of the tracks, well, if you want to compete at the top end, you have to get to the tracks. And it's probably like a 10 or 20 position per track benefit for each one you do, as compared to where you would otherwise finish. So we did that for 3 tracks. So one of them was Memphis. Well, of course, the Memphis events got changed around because it rained, and so we didn't get to run that track, and we lost the drag race there, etc.
Bad for you
And
guys,
then-
right?
Say it again?
You guys probably would have done really well in the drag race.
Yeah,
the car's like basically a cheat mode for drag racing, especially bracket drag, because it will do this within like 100th of a second over and over and over and over and over and over again. So you can dial in the bracket drags so close. It's and there's no obviously no shifting,
no
and
launching.
no launching. You don't have to. You just mat the pedal and let the car go. It's really. It's a cheater mode. So yeah, missing the drags this time lost us some catch up.
So that part was kind of disappointing there. But then right after that, we drove to Eagles Canyon, and we ran at Eagles Canyon in a rented Mustang for 2 hours at an event earlier this year. And so we had some experience there. And not only that, but it was super duper hot. I think it was like 93 or 94 in the afternoon, and we got the tires that needed heat. So like between all these factors, and Ross talked about a little bit, there was oil dry on the track for some of the top guys. So I was hoping that would be one of our events that we would do really well. And it was. We were able, I think we were like 6th in the morning session, with an electric car, beating all the Porsches and all the guys, right? And that felt really good. And not only that, I mean, and maybe even more importantly than that, the car felt really good in the hot. Unfortunately, this is another like sort of 1 lap tip. You set the grid based on the qualifying of the first track event. And every event after that, then you're kind of in your run group. Sometimes they change around the run group sizes, 4, 5, 6 cars, whatever. But within that run group, you can sort of negotiate your position. And in fact, you have to negotiate your position every single event. And so depending on whether you're good, whether you've been there or not, whether your car is working well, and you can sort of move back and forth. Well, at ECR, the first session, I moved to the back because I thought, well, all these guys are super high power cars, and there's some straights here, and they're going to kill me. Well, that was a mistake. And we ended up passing one of the other guys, and he was really nice about it. He basically got out of the way and let me go past him. But in the 1 lap, you really don't want to have to either follow or pass anybody, because it's just slowing you down. It's slowing them down, and it's slowing you down.
Right.
So we were able to get 6th in the session with passing someone, and the car started to lower its power in the 2nd and 3rd laps. So by the time we got to the end, it was totally Miata driving the thing. It had maybe 230 horsepower. So knowing the track there, huge difference. And so for me, that was a highlight. The tires worked great. It was super hot. If they were terrible at tire rack on the wet skid pad, and they were, then they were great at ECR in the 94-degree heat, all warmed up.
Yep. So looking at the results, you guys did really well in your class. I mean, I don't see any complaints possible there. How'd the class go?
Yeah, we sort of played between us, sharing driving responsibilities to make sure that we would try and beat the other people in class. That was actually one of our main goals. We set up goals like before the event. One of them was get back safely. Another one was bring the car back without damage, right? I mean, these are the basic things. But one of them from a performance standpoint was win our class again, and we were able to do that.
Yep.
So that felt good.
How did you guys do overall?
We ended up, I believe it was like 20th or 21st.
Yeah,
Where were we?
20th.
Yeah, yep. Which that kind of was a letdown, I would say, a little bit. We
It's a
thought,
tough field though.
yeah, really, so a number of factors influence that. One is, like you said, tough field, way faster cars than there were 2 years ago. No attrition, hardly at all at the top of the field. Usually high-strung cars, driving really fast, a few of them fall out. And there was attrition in the overall field, just not at the top end. And then picking the wrong tires hurt us, really badly. So overall, you optimize the run. I still think the top 10 is the potential. The other guys that were running the Tesla, Chris Hatch and Kevin Waters, he runs a site called trackmyev.com, and he's got, I think, at least 2, maybe even 3 Tesla Model 3s. But the difference, and his was well prepped as well for the track. The difference is he's only done, he hadn't done any of the tracks that we were doing the one lap on. And he's probably done, I think he said 50 or 60 days, like at VIR and a few places out east. So he was basically coming in cold to the tracks, and they were having some of the same challenges Chad was talking about with sleep, keeping up, and he didn't even get the track walk. That's another one of the secrets, I think, for one lap is you need to get to the track early so that you can do the track walk. And ideally you bring some sort of a non-motorized bike or scooter or something.
Right.
And you go out and you can do the full track once, twice, 3 times, because you don't really get to see it otherwise.
Right.
If it's a track you've never been to, I mean, you're really in big trouble if you've never seen it. Chad drove AMP for the first time, and that track is just incredible, up and down the hills, blind corners everywhere. I mean, if you go to that track and you've never driven it before, and now you're trying to go fast, you don't have a chance. I will give away one other secret too. I was talking to Randy Post at NOLA, and he told me his version of the track walk, at least for one lap, is that he takes his phone and he has a mounting system for his bike, and he goes out and he drives the line where he thinks it should be on his bike. Does it once or twice, and then he'll bring that back to the paddock and he'll use his phone and he'll scrub through the footage more quickly and essentially pretend like it's at speed so that he can see what it's going to look like at speed in the car. And I thought that was really slick. We didn't do that. I just went out on a scooter. But the scooter and doing 2 or 3 laps, even at some of these places where I've literally never been before, we were still able to get top 10, top 15 finishes out of that.
Right.
So do you have any highlights from the track, or do you have any favorite tracks?
I have lots of favorite tracks.
They're all your favorite tracks.
They're not all my favorite tracks. I like the ones that have elevation. I'm very partial to Road America. I'm actually from Wisconsin originally, and I remember going to Road America when I was a kid. So I'm very partial to Road America. Road America kind of eats cars though, because it's old school concrete walls, 90-degree turns everywhere, the kink.
Fast.
Yeah, super fast. Yeah, super fast everywhere.
I think you'd agree, Andy, that the new Eagles Canyon is really sweet. I wish that was nearer to us. I would drive down there again just to run a weekend there. That was cool.
Yeah, it is super fun. Lots of on camera, off camera, up and down the hills. Very, very obviously brand new, nice surface. And then even with all of that, also there's not really anything to hit. If you do happen to go off track, I kind of like that from the training aspect. Chad talked about before, we do Mid-America Monoplaster RPM. That track is great because there's literally nothing. It's just cornfield, so you can have someone try something and they go off. It's no big deal.
The bummer about Eagles Canyon though is we were told not to come back with EVs.
Oh yeah.
Why's that?
Yeah. That
In
is
fact, that's why we
interesting.
ran a Mustang during the pre-run, because they wouldn't let us run a Model 3. So, but Brock had a deal with them that they sort of had to still allow it for one lap. But they're one of maybe a handful of tracks that, for one reason or another, is kind of spooked about the EVs. And
From the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. I talked to him beforehand, before the event, the test event, and then also in person at the test event and at the one lap too. And it was basically because of the fire issues. So people see, in the news, obviously every time an EV burns, it's a big story, regardless of whether, statistically it's more or less than a gas car.
Right.
But they see that and they get scared about it. That I think that's also one of the reasons why the Tesla 3 and Y are really good. Every time you see those fires, it's not a 3 or a Y. Well, why is that? Well, they figured out how to design the battery in a way that even if it gets damaged, it doesn't light on fire.
Right.
The only way a 3 or a Y lights on fire is if it literally gets cut in half. Well, how often does that happen at a track event? Basically never.
Right.
It's
especially
I'm
since you're not wheel to wheel or anything.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. The funny thing was, I think at one of the tracks they had a fire in a gas car like right before we got there, and then of course us and the EVs show up and everything's fine. The guy at ECR was very interested because clearly the electronic cars, in general are becoming more and more popular. Hybrids, a lot of the hybrids, high performance hybrids are out there too, and people want to take those to the track. So he was interested in figuring out what it would take for the track and the insurance, that the tracks have to be able to run the cars. I think there's probably something there. Tesla puts out like a first responders guide that sort of explains how to deal with the cars. But there might be something there where you could create either a foundation or a nonprofit that would help tracks get prepared for electric cars. And part of it is the safety aspect, but the other part of it, I think, is more of the business opportunity of how do you cater to people who are coming out with electric cars? How do you help them charge?
Mm-hmm.
Because you could charge for that. We go to all these tracks and there's gas pumps sitting there. Well, it's not that hard to put a few chargers in to allow cars to charge too.
I don't know. We've been to a couple of tracks. I think they have enough trouble trying to put a 110 volt outlet there. So
yeah, that's true too. That is true too. Some of them are challenged. It's not a small amount of electricity that we're talking about.
No.
If you want it to work well. Some of the fancier, like ECR, is sort of the country club model. So I would think that places like that, they're going to have owners that have electric cars, and they should work on it. I think it'll benefit them.
As the race that you had participated in, would you do it again?
You bet.
Yeah.
I want to do it again.
Yeah, we have schemes of getting a Cybertruck and doing one lap in a Cybertruck eventually.
A Cybertruck?
Yeah, the Tesla Cybertruck is one of their forthcoming products. It's a big, it's their answer to the pickup, and it's a funky product that they're coming out with, but it's going to have the new powertrain that they're engineering and working on right now, and so supposedly it's going to be something like 1,000 horsepower and 1,000 foot-pounds of torque and 3 motors, and so it'll be absurd.
There's multiple competitions going on at the one lap all at the same time. One of them is like to be the fastest, but there's also the guys that are like trailing the bar around. There's also the people who are working towards the sportsmanship award. I think the Cybertruck would be like in the ridiculous category. And I think it's a good idea. I think somebody else was talking about having a taco truck.
That's Jennifer.
That's Jennifer. Jennifer likes her taco trucks.
I think that's a good idea, actually. You would be the most popular person in the paddock by far with the taco truck.
Right.
As long as you can like
Absolutely.
pull the propane tanks off before you go on. Yeah, there's a
that's
couple issues.
not a problem. We'd have to have veggie tacos for Randy, so that's okay.
That's
So
okay too.
We
Do
could
you-
do that.
Do you think that there's anybody out there with the electric cars and they're sponsoring them for the company to see how well they would perform in something like this? And have you thought about reaching out?
Yeah, we certainly did reach out. I think right now it's aftermarket. It's the aftermarket companies that want to prove their products, and we worked with some, right? We worked with Mountain Pass. The Aero guys, Meyer EV out in Charlotte gave us help. I think it's right now still aftermarket. I think a lot of the manufacturers are still focused on just making products that people can use and buy every day. And so the racing aspect of it is kind of beyond their target right now. I will say that, you know, watching Tesla do the development on the Plaid and the Plaid Plus Model S, it clearly looks like they are focusing directly on track. I mean, they're taking it to the Nuremberg ring. You don't do that unless you're focused on track use. So like one of our schemes is the Cybertruck. Another one is, well, how do we get a Plaid, or how do we get the new model Roadster and run that? Because if you get into those, I think you have a good shot at winning the whole thing. And that would be something for an electric car to win the whole stinking thing.
Yep.
So what did you like about the event itself? The best parts about it?
I really like the whole event. I like going to tracks every day. You know, the first couple of days you're just kind of getting going, but by the third, fourth, fifth day, it's like, oh, we're going to a new track today. Learning new tracks I love. Most people have one lap hangover when they're done.
It's kind of like, it's kind of like a week long bar hopping at a bachelor party in motorsport form. It's just kind of this crazy, like, moving circus. So it's really kind of the whole thing. It's the whole experience that is fun. So yeah.
There's a forum, like a Facebook forum kind of thing, where a lot of the drivers have joined and they talk back and forth, and afterwards they all talk about missing going to the track the next day, or not knowing what to do with themselves when they don't have to drive 10 hours to the next track the next day. They just miss it so much.
So how was your sleeping arrangement? Were you one of the guys that packed the trailer that followed behind you, or did you just throw out a tent and kind of have one of those, throw it in the air and it kind of pops up?
Yes.
So the Model 3's got a lot of room, so we don't need a trailer. You know, we've got a front trunk and a rear trunk and the back seats, and the whole thing is quite spacious. So, you know, we probably bring more than the average team. You know, I'm an engineer guy, so I always want to bring more tools than I need, and you know, so we probably bring more than we need. But the sleeping arrangements, you know, we do more sleeping in the car than other teams, and I think we kind of found out this year that the best way to do it in our car is to switch every time you stop to supercharge, because you just start to get so tired that if you try to do multiple stints, it's rough. Other than that, the only reason we brought a tent, and we brought a quick pop-up tent like some of the teams, was to throw all our stuff in so it wouldn't get wet when it rains.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's probably another pro tip, but
it's definitely another pro tip. It always rains in the one lap. The only question is how much and how prepared everyone is for it.
Yeah.
And where. Yeah.
And where. Yeah. We had one of those throw up pop-up tents, and Ross talked about the video that would be hilarious of them trying to get it down.
We had exactly the same.
We did exactly the same thing at Memphis, because everybody got their tent out at Memphis, and if you watched up from the top in the paddock, you'd see all these people trying to get these tents back together, and it's just a clown show. We're just ridiculous. Nobody can do it.
You just bring one for each event, just throw them up one direction and just keep going.
It's not a bad idea.
That was the other thing we came up with was you buy one big pack of brand new socks and you just throw them away every day.
You don't want to keep them.
No.
Mm.
But
So what do you do differently
sleeping.
next time?
Yeah, I was going to say the sleeping, we slept about 4 hours or less at each hotel, but differently next time. I would say we need to figure out a way to make the car run at 100% power for 3 laps, and we're still working on that. It's super fast the first lap and most of the second lap, and then it starts to slowly taper off. So it's really good for drag racing, really good for the autocross, and we did an oval too. The oval was wild, but it was plenty good for the oval, but we got to figure out how to, so that's kind of the evolution of EVs is this one is better than the others, but the next ones are going to be even better yet for this kind of thing. And maybe someday they can do a 45-minute sprint race, and maybe someday they'll do 24-hour enduros. I have no idea, but that's a long way off, I think. But yeah, I don't know, Andy, what do you think for next time?
Yeah, we had the power thing. That's, kind of our car specific. The one lap tire choice is just absolutely critical. So we probably would pick a different set of tires. Yeah, in general, the rest of it, I think we did okay. There wasn't a lot to change where, second run now, third run would be a little bit better, I think, if we did it in the same car, but we're getting there. And that's another one lap kind of secret too. Ross, having experienced his first one, now has kind of part of it figured out. By the time you do it 3-4 times, you've sort of got the arrangement down and kind of how to optimize the event. And obviously you need to know how to optimize your car too, but it really does take a couple times to sort of figure out what to do.
Okay.
Awesome.
So personally, did you learn anything like about the car, the track, or the event?
Yeah, I think we definitely did. A lot of the tracks this year were new for us. So yeah, we got to pre-run some of them, but we learned about all of the tracks. It's sort of a fun event. You don't really get to learn that much about the tracks. Oh, I have a replacement driver here trying to cut in.
Next gen driver coming in.
Yep.
Hi.
She says hi.
Hi.
I don't think she can hear us, but that's okay.
No.
He was at soccer practice. Yeah, I completely forgot what I was talking about.
That's okay. Chad, did you guys learn anything personally? Anything about your driving? Anything about the track and about the car, about the event?
Yeah, I would just go back to we got to figure out how to continue to get the car to work 100%, because for me that was especially difficult. I'm a muscle memory driver, so I have to do it over and over and over and over and over and over again to be fast, which is not optimal for this event because you have to go out and be fast immediately at places you've never driven at before. And that is made especially difficult because the car's power is changing all the time. After the first lap, then the brake points are changing and the throttle pickup points are changing. And theoretically, you should be rolling the same speed through, but you have to let off the brake at a different point. And so for me, I guess I would make that as a note that I need to work on that stuff. But I think if we can work on the car and make the car more consistent, it'll make certainly both of us, but especially me, more consistent. So.
Yeah, it does make sense. It does. Chad, you were just saying, I think it does make sense to make the car more consistent because it would help us both. However, the one lap is not an event about optimizing the last tenths. It's an event where it's like a marathon. You need to do well, you need to perform at or just above potential in each event, and that's how you do well in the overall. So
The worst thing you can do is like spin once even.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
so
it's
you're
because of the
driving
way the points
9/10
work.
at most.
Right.
Most of the time.
Right. Yep. That's true.
So, how can our audience follow your team exploits?
We have a bunch of stuff up on YouTube and Facebook and all that kind of thing. They're all linked from teampgr.com. But if you search for Team PGR on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, all that kind of thing, we have those all up there. We try and post, whenever we're doing something interesting. That could be engineering the car or driving it. So yeah, appreciate everyone going out there and checking out everything. We've got all of the one lap content posted now, including like a review from the car, what we did to it, all that kind of stuff out there right now.
Great. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming onto our podcast. This was very, very informative. I've never heard of an electric race car as of yet. So it sounds like there's going to be much more access to them and abilities with them in the future. So I look forward to following you guys.
Yeah,
Well,
I
thank
think
you
so.
for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I'm looking forward to it too. See what comes
Yeah.
out.
Really appreciate the podcast and all the great interviews you guys do. So thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Dominating with Dawson.
Okay, so we're here with Awesome Dawson. And
Hey, how's it going?
I have a question for you, Ben.
Hit me.
Contact patches or contact patch? What is it?
Well, it's a transdermal medication that can give you a dosage of whatever you need, whether it's nicotine, any other type of medication. That's my understanding of a contact patch. Is that correct?
It is one of the definitions, yes.
Cool. Can you do pain medication that way? I'd like to get a few of those, just slap them all across my forehead.
As a matter of fact, you can.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that I had the knee problem one time, and somebody was like, "Here, put this lidocaine patch on." I was like, "Whoa, slow down, guy. I'm not dying here." Okay.
And that's not my knee.
So the contact patch is how much your tire is touching the track on a race car or any car. Contact patch is how much of your tire is touching the surface of the road or the track. Right? Bill?
Yep, it is.
He's asking Bill.
You're such a dummy. I don't know. Like, yeah.
Ben's like, can I phone a friend?
The contact patch is the part of your tire that's touching the track. And ideally, you can optimize your contact patch and how it's interacting with the track by adjusting your camber and your caster and your toe and those sort of things, so that you idealize the contact patch for each corner of the car, so that each tire is working as hard for you and what you're trying to do on track as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And say more, Bill. That's all.
So what I always think about is the contact patch is the key to everything about driving, because it is the only part that is touching the ground.
Yes,
otherwise
very important.
Otherwise, your car is flying through the air. And there's various things that you can do to affect your contact patch. Certain things like tire pressure, camber, caster, all that. But the size of your tire and the weight of your car are all a multivariable equation that gets you your contact patch. But the more contact patch you have, the more grip you have at any level of track friction.
Right.
So the reason that contact patch is so important is because when you're doing weight shifts and weight balance and weight transfer, your contact patch is varying. So at every turn, the reason that your traction changes during a turn is because your contact patches are changing and the amount of grip you have changes. Same thing for acceleration and deceleration, which is why the key to an approach to the key to understanding your driving is to understand the relative impacts and effects of your contact patch by the way you drive.
If you're a scientist.
Yeah. There's that. Or you just get like Ben and just say, just give me the car. I'll see you later.
Yeah, there's just so everybody can feel better about being garage heroes in training. You can be a total idiot, a total know nothing, and still be pretty fast or do good at this. Because here I am.
And you're fast.
I do the things fast.
So a lot of it though is it's not that you're, I mean, in spite of what you say, you're not an idiot, but a lot of it is feel for some drivers.
Yes.
Or habit, or just an innate understanding from doing it for so long that you're just used to doing it. But fundamentally, the physics are still the same.
Right. And if you find a way, if you figure out how to optimize that stuff, even for your friends who can't pay attention to facts,
right,
you're going to be the cars, the platform will work a lot better. So, like me, like I am a dum-dum on a team full of smart people who understand this stuff, so they can help get the car better. But it makes a big difference from when our car 5 or 6 years ago, when our car wasn't set up as well as it was to now. I mean, we have a lot more grip, and we've sort of optimized a lot of things. We run bigger wheels and tires than we used to, and we're doing a better job with the alignment, with putting the wheels to the in the right attitude toward the track for the kind of corners we're going to be making. We got the fronts working out a lot better. We have an E30, so there's not too much you can do in the rear. But we, at least in our own example, I'm an all-day dum-dum, but my teammates are engineers who get this sort of stuff. So it makes a big difference when you can use the science to optimize your platform. You're going to be a lot faster.
So, Vicky, one of the things you've been thinking about, I know, when we discuss things, is weight transfer and how the weight moves around in a car.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand the impact of that on the contact patch and why it matters?
I just know that I need to have as much balance in my car to keep it smooth on the track, while at the same time getting the most grip out of my tires.
So how do you try to keep the balance, as you say, balanced? What are your controls, or what do you try to do?
My controls are my brake and the gas. So I know that if I want to shift the weight to the front, I would brake. If I want to take the weight off, I would apply the gas to kind of shift it better. And I just know going into a turn, I would like to have my car balanced so I can get as much grip out of all my tires instead of just one or two. Okay. So far in my learning.
No, I'm trying to see where you're at and what you're thinking about.
Yeah. And if I can do that and still make my tires chirp or squeal a little bit, then I've done something well.
Are you at the point where you notice which tire or tires are chirping?
Okay. No, I just know that they're chirping at the moment. And at the moment in my learning, I'm trying to get it to where I can get maybe a little bit of rotation, because I know a lot of rotation is not good, but just enough.
It depends who you are.
Just so I can feel right now in my learning, it's just so I feel comfortable with the tires making that noise, and how much can I push it before I don't have traction anymore.
Tire talk is great feedback.
Is where I'm at with it, right? And I don't know enough about it because I haven't reached the point where, right now I'm feeling the tires kind of lose it, and that's why I'm kind of like either stepping on the gas or stepping on the brake or whatever, or changing the way I'm steering when I feel it's starting to slip a little bit. Because sometimes I don't want it to slip, but I do want to get as much as I can out of it right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
In my HPD E2 learning.
No worries. What about you, Miss Jen? How are you feeling with your contact patch and controlling it?
And nothing.
Nothing yet?
Nothing with the contact patch.
Okay. So I think I'm asking myself this question, but let's pretend I'm asking Ben.
Okay.
Why is Vicky's pursuit of a stable contact patch a good idea, or why is it a bad idea?
Well, you don't want anything to be too stable. If it's too stable and too comfortable, you're going to be slow.
Sure.
So her pursuit of chirp and tire feedback in corners just sort of let her know it's kind of a feeler for how close am I to the limit. That's great. I mean, you can kind of tune it up from there. But if you're kind of already bouncing through the corners, expecting a chirp from, you're getting a chirp from some corner. Even if you're not sure, you're kind of working through the corner. If you get a chirp right there at the apex, it's a pretty good indicator that you're kind of doing it right. Is that what you're asking? So I
don't know. I know where I'm going, but I don't know how to ask it. So let me answer the question that I didn't ask.
Okay. hit me with that non-answer.
So part of the reason why it's a good strategy is a car at rest with all 4 tires with the same contact patch, assuming it's a square setup and pressures are the same and the car is balanced, weight balanced, is where you have your maximum amount of total available grip. Anything you do to upset the car, meaning accelerate, decelerate, turn, shifts the weight, which gives more grip to where the weight shifted and less grip to where the weight was, but lowers the total grip available. So if Vicky were able to go at speed and still keep her car 100% stable or fixed, she has more available grip to use. So I understand the pursuit, but it's an impossibility when you're moving. So you just want to get up to the level that you can and use what you have. And I think that's the next step for you, Miss Vicky, is to try to use the grip that you have fully as opposed to intermittently. And that comes with time and comfort, because you have to be able to feel comfortable enough to go past that level and still know you're not going to die.
Right.
Well,
dying is bad.
When you think about contact patches and optimizing them, keep in mind that you're working from a production-based vehicle. You only have a certain amount of options as far as wheel, tire size, and that sort of thing. So you're sort of always working from a very finished product to a less finished product, to be more accustomed to what you want. But there's only so far you can go. Like, just to sort of make a big example, when I raced karts on dirt on an oval, we ran humongous right side tires. Like, I think the 2 right sides were the same, but they were a lot bigger than our left side tires, and the left front was smaller than the right side tires, and the left rear was even smaller. And we ran, I'd run 11 pounds of pressure on the right side. I might run 8 pounds of pressure in the left front, and in the left rear, I might run 5 pounds of pressure. So we would do all this kind of stuff to chase the optimal contact patch and grip, but we had a lot more options, a lot more stuff you could change. So don't beat yourself up if you're not, getting your contact patches exactly right with your track day car, or even your, stock based endurance racing car or something like that, or your club racing car. You can do what you can, but ultimately you're not going to be able to match the folks that are racing, formula cars or karts or things that are race vehicles that are built from the ground up. Have a lot more stuff to adjust and a lot more options. So do the best you can optimizing your contact patch, but don't lose sleep over it.
So Miss Jen, contact patch, weight transfer. It's coming.
On it.
It's coming.
On it.
Okay. Should be fun. Can't wait to see you guys at New Jersey and Mid Ohio. 2 weeks back to back HPDEs. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, one of these days you people are going to actually meet me, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
I want to catch up with Ben and race.
I know.
Let's race. Yeah, we'll do it.
I want to be in the same spot as Ben.
How about Road Atlanta this year? I'll come down. Let's make it happen.
We can do that.
Yeah, I'm hell or high water. I'll be racing limits at Road Atlanta this year.
Sounds like an event has been planned on Dominating with Dawson.
Yay! I'm so ready. I just want to get to a racetrack again.
Are you getting itchy?
Yeah, I think I've done a pretty good job of keeping my stuff together. But yeah, now that I can see the daylight, going to VAR a couple times, like summer, early fall this year, I'm ready to hit it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
VIR is really close to us.
It's an hour from my front door, so I'm really excited about that. I like our team was talking about that they're going to go run at least some fraction splinter cell of my team is going to take the E30 over to CMP and run the Lucky Dog event. And we were talking about that. We were like, we need seatbelts, and usually our team kind of splits everything up. I was like, well, since you guys have done so much to get the car ready, and I haven't seen y'all at all and done a single bit of work, I was like, I will buy the seatbelts for the car. Let me do something, because I have not put in any labor at all, and the cars are ready to race this summer. I was like, I could put some seatbelts.
Did you already buy them?
Yeah, it's already done. We'll talk about whatever opportunities abound later. But yeah, I already bought them off of Jags.
Okay. I got a bunch. Okay.
Okay.
Very
Next
well.
time, I'm building the spec car. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Very well. We can do that. Next time on Bartering with Dominating with Dawson.
Bartering, haggling with Dawson.
There we go. Thank you, Ben.
All right,
Thanks,
thank y'all.
Ben.
All right. Vicky, Jen, got one?
Let me look. Any one of these, right?
It doesn't even have to be red. I just flipping through and getting red.
Contact patch. What's contact patch?
All right. I don't know. Maybe we should ask Ben next time he's
Oh
on.
yeah, this is gonna be one of those where I'm not a scientist, and I'm just
He
gonna
punts
say
it
what
over to me, I think, on this one.
Yeah, well, Bill's gonna get into talking about stick shit, and I'll just say what I think it is.
All right, Miss Jen.
All right. We're here with
that huge
Oh,
cat.
sorry, the cat is
that gigantic cat is what we're doing.